Welcome to the Hendrick Hudson Board of Ed meeting. We are currently in session. If you could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first order of business will be to get our agenda in order. Usually I ask first.
Didn't want to forget.
So we will be pulling, that would be,
Fiscal.
I believe I think it's audit acceptance. I think it's it's general.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any others? Anybody would like to pull? Okay, and can I get a, pardon? Then can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? Okay. All those in favor? Charles, you had a question regarding the audit acceptance?
No, just wanted to talk about it.
You wanna
Thought I'd
discuss
do
it?
the audit committee report while we.
We'll vote on that when we do the, when we discuss audit committee and we discuss the, okay. So that brings us to, acceptance of donations. As always, we are very fortunate that people remember us when they are doing, when they're looking for places to give, whether it is the donations from Target that we have from Buchanan Verplank and from Furnace Woods, and also another donation for the Katzenstein Scholarship, which is for every month. Yep. There's a donation that's for special ed, for special needs students. There's also a donation of toys and books from Mr. Catalan to our district. I saw that pile of books in Jim Mackin's office. It's enormous. Thank you very much. And there's the last donation is a donation for District Cleanup Day, which is individuals who donated items. Can you make thank you? Whispering Pines in Mayapack and Sabelico Greenhouses in Hopewell Junction. I believe they donated mulch and plants and shrubs, and it was put to good use. So can I get a motion to approve these 5 donations? All those in favor?
Aye.
Which leads us to the next, the individuals, the donation of people's time, which is even more valuable. So,
Yes,
if you would
I'd
like
like to invite up Beth Gruber, who helped coordinate this outstanding effort, and I'll have her give the history because she is one of the only Lynx who was here for the whole thought process and when the idea was born to actually coordinating the event a couple weeks ago.
She saw the evolution.
the last woman
Yeah.
standing.
You're right.
That's right.
The missing link.
That's
Is
right.
this on?
Congratulations.
I haven't even said anything yet, but thank you. The rumblings have been going on for a while about this. It was a PTA-led initiative. They said, what can we do to help clean up our schools, build school pride, community spirit? And, it finally came down to who can organize this, and I guess everyone looked at me in the room. So I ended up doing it. And what we did was we assigned a team captain at each building. So it was all 5 schools, and there's one of them, Andrea O'Malley at BV, and the district office. That was another one. So we had, and that was key because we needed someone who could really bring people together and get people out for this, because it was something where we said, well, we never did this before. We could end up with 2 people looking at each other, at each building and not getting anything done. And it turned out we had over 200 people show up at all the buildings in total, which was an amazing result. And I have to thank all the team captains. It was Lisa Gutchis, who's here. You could even stand up for the high school. Please stand up. I wish everyone were here, but they couldn't all make it. We had Debbie Marriott at the district office, who was fantastic. And we also had Diane Swartfager at Blue Mountain, who's also here. And does this year-round, by the way. It's not just cleanup day. And we also had Analia Del Giorgio at Furnace Woods School. She was great, too. And Donna Teresi, who's also here at Frank G. And I think that was everybody. Yeah, so they brought people in and really organized the whole thing. We also had reusable water bottles donated by Wheeler Brader. They were excited to be involved. And we spent the morning just cleaning up. The kids got really excited about it after first looking around like, what are we doing here? And I think they really got a lot out of it. And I wanted to have some of the kids come up. I don't know if Matt Gutchis, if you want to go first, if you just want to speak a little bit. And as he's walking up, I just also want to mention, I don't want to forget, we couldn't have done this without the help of the administrators who really got involved and kind of stuck their necks out and said, all right, we'll help you, whatever. Mr. Merlini, back here, thank you so much, who reminded me that people don't necessarily know what a weed is. What's a weed? So yeah, I had to kind of tell people. And Mr. Catalan, also, who was instrumental. And Mr. Hochreiter, who was new to this place and said, you want a what? All right, I'll send an email out and a voicemail, and okay, do what you want. So everyone was great. And people even said, we want to do it again in the spring, to which I said, whoa, hold your horses. But we're definitely going to do it again in the fall, at least make it an annual thing, and hopefully more people will come out next year. Thank you.
I'm Matt Gutchis, and I participated in the district cleanup day last Saturday. I was invited by friends to come out, and I'm glad that I did. It was such a nice experience to come out and help out, and it was great to see all of the people who wanted to better their school. I worked for about 3 hours outside of the school and was able to get a lot done. What was even nicer than helping out on Saturday was returning to school on Monday. It was great to see all of the people on my bus appreciate the work that was done, and I was glad to know I was a part of it. This was really a great event, and I thank all that participated in making it happen. 9th grader Gabby Blitzer had this to say about the event. This past weekend I helped at the cleanup. We mulched, planted, and threw out our scraps. It was a lot of fun, and I would definitely do this again in my free time. Sophomore Jessica Goldman said, in my opinion, the cleanup day was a great success. The idea of getting the whole community together to help beautify the district was fantastic. One might say, oh, that's not fun, you actually had to work to help, but it was more than work. We came together as a whole, and it was non-stop laughter the entire time. This day not only helped beautify our school, but helped unite our community, in which we should be proud to be a part of.
Thank you. Katie, do you want to come up? Katie Kenny, 9th grader and soccer player. Extraordinaire.
Hi, my name's Katie Kenny, and I'm going to be talking about the District Cleanup Day and how the girls' soccer team was assigned to the district office. Okay. Although for me, District Cleanup Day started off with sleeping through 15 alarms, 11 calls, and 20 texts. I didn't want to disappoint Debbie Marriott over there, but the rest of the day was pretty awesome. And even though I was a little late, and let me just tell you, the party didn't start till I got there, by the way. But I still got to do a lot for the district office. The day was obviously full of cleaning, but it was also full of some singing, dancing, and bonding with my team. Although it doesn't sound like fun, picking up garbage, picking weeds, and spreading around hot, manure-smelling mulch was actually a good time. I got to spend time with my team, the varsity girls, and some of their parents while doing something good for the school and the community, which I thought was awesome. I'm really happy that my team and I got to be a part of it. Thank you.
Now I think we have a little guy from Frank G. Is that right? You remind me of your name? You can announce it.
Tell me your name.
Hi, my name is Brady Bear, and getting to do this cleanup day was fun, as though they called it cleanup day, but what I really got to do was really rake up leaves and plant flowers, and that's why my parents called it Beautification Day.
That right there is why we did it. Right there. Thank you.
Home? Do you help He's like, I can't hear you. Good job.
We have one more. I'm so sorry. Come on up.
Hi, my name is Gabby Kemsky,
I'm Kendall Christensen.
and we're captains of the volleyball team. Thanks. The varsity JV and modified volleyball teams enjoyed a beautiful day at the Blue Mountain Middle School Gardens. We had the pleasure of working with our coaches, the Girl Scouts, Blue Mountain Middle School parents, and children. We weeded, edged, trimmed many bushes, and mulched for 3 hours. The water break was perfect. As you can imagine, once Coach got going, there's no telling when we would rest. Thank you, Ms. Briggy, for taking care of the red mulch around the student-made flag project. It looks beautiful. The students were all very eager to help with the wheelbarrows as they maneuvered around the hill.
Each garden at Blue Mountain Middle School has a special theme. The volleyball team members, especially Mrs. McCory, as we tended her garden, the tree. The Girl Scouts weeded the pizza garden, the parents weeded the original garden, and the volleyball team handled the gazebo garden, medieval garden, butterfly garden, BMS front sign, Mrs. Miller's garden, as well as trim many bushes. Thank you to Mr. Bagara and the Blue Mountain Middle School cross-country team for cleaning up the 8th grade wing area. Each year, we do many fundraisers for various organizations. It was nice for our dedicated team to give back to the community in a unique way.
Thank you for letting us share our team's experiences with you tonight.
Yes, absolutely.
And they reminded me of one more thing, and I don't want to be on Claire Carey's bad side. She provided the water, so
Oh,
thank you,
key.
Claire.
I'd like to thank everybody, the teachers, the coaches, the teams, the students, obviously the parents, who not only brought the kids there, but were pretty dirty when they were done. It was a wonderful thing. The giving up a Saturday morning is huge. Those of us who have, actually it's anybody who has a limited amount of time to give up 3 hours on a Saturday morning is really significant, and it's your dedication to your school is truly appreciated, so thank you. The trail cleanup was the same day, so I know that they had the cross-country team up, burrowing up in the woods behind the middle school as well, so that was another contribution. Claire, thank you for the water. Believe me, I was more than happy to see you drive up. And Beth Gruber, thank you. Beth, I think you really do deserve a special thank you because you did make this happen. I mean, the idea was terrific, and you just pushed it through, and I thank you for that. So, thank you.
It was truly special, and I think one of the strong things about projects like this is that it brings people together into community. And when your kids see parents and adults working with teachers and administrators, they get a different view of the school and your relationship with the building. And so I think that's so important for children to see parents appreciate the buildings and appreciate the grounds and want to help out, that it really builds a different understanding of what the school is for and why we're doing this. And so it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed doing it. We had a great fun at BV.
I didn't go that far.
It was great fun at the high school as well. We really did a lot. We planted, we picked up garbage. It was definitely a different experience, but so worthwhile to see so many members of the community out there and, willing to lend a hand. So it was very positive.
And it was truly spectacular. I never knew that they made leopard print gardening gloves.
I was going to ask what she was going to have to tell you.
Actually, I wish I did have gloves on when I was picking up garbage from underneath the bleachers. That would have been definitely a bonus. Next time, I will definitely bring my gloves. I learned a very good lesson.
You had a new manicure afterwards.
Yeah, I know.
But thank you very much. That does bring us, it seems somewhat redundant, but audience comments. Is there would anybody care to? Okay. Then that brings us to our superintendent's report.
Okay, I'm going to save the majority of my dialogue and comments when we get into discussing facilities and APPR. But so I'll just take this time to remind the board that we have a very busy weekend coming up next weekend before our next board meeting, the weekend of the 18th and 19th. We have the Hall of Fame dinner on Friday the 18th, as well as Hen Hud Has Talent is also that evening at the high school. The homecoming game is in the afternoon on Saturday the 19th, as well as the Board of Education meet and greet earlier in the morning on Saturday the 19th. We have welcomed, and the board has approved the appointment of Jan Yablau, who is our interim director of pupil personnel services. So he has been meeting with key staff and working with our principals and Alice, myself, and Enrique on getting acclimated. We also have, we are in the early stages of developing an app, an iPhone, smartphone app, linking all of the essential information on our website, so folks who have smartphones can download that, have it on their personal device, and get really important information in a much timely and quicker way. That's exciting. And our speech team is competing at Yale University, and that is a very exciting endeavor for those students. We hear a lot about our athletic teams and the bright lights and Friday night lights, and it's important to underscore all of the other students whose names might not be in the paper for scoring touchdowns, baskets, or spiking the volleyball. So I hope at the end of their contest at Yale, we'll be able to recognize those students and really learn more about their instruction through the debate club and what their experience at Yale was like. So much to learn and much to look forward to.
Where do you see our drama club?
Oh,
Exactly. So much. So, okay. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, so that brings us to our presentation, which would be the regarding the proposed capital bond.
All right, I'll go over to
Thank you.
Okay, so a couple things. One is the board has two documents. One is in landscape form are the minutes from last night's facilities committee meeting, and we can get into that or weave the outcome of that meeting into this presentation. But really the purpose of tonight is to give the board an update on the recommendations and recommended next steps from the facilities committee to the board as we deliberate over a potential bond based on the input we received from the community and based on the needs and demands really that our facilities need attention to. So I'll walk us through this through the PowerPoint. We can have Q&A, but I will ask the board to refer to the minutes or the landscape document that goes into some line item specifics that just wouldn't show up on the PowerPoint slide. So we'll start with the school district, the Board of Education goal regarding facilities is to make sure buildings and grounds are clean, safe, academically effective, and aesthetically pleasing. And I know the committee has spent a lot of time focused on that area. So over the next couple minutes, I'd like to talk about walk us through the timeline, how we got to where we are today, talk about our meeting from yesterday, obviously the recommendations from the committee to the board, get into some breadth and depth over the scope of the project, review the finances and how this will not only be paid for, but how it will be aided, talk about a revised timeline that I think will meet the board and the community's needs, and lastly, identify the work that needs to be done. So as I understand it, the timeline for the most recent deliberations goes back almost 2 years, to December of 2011, when the board asked the community to approve a $20-some-odd million project, and that was defeated. Shortly thereafter, the board used the services of David White, who was here last week, to ask the community what they would support, what wouldn't they support, and really get a better understanding of why the bond in December of 2011 failed. Those results were made public to the board in March of 2012, and during last year, the 12-13 school year, I know the Facilities Committee wrestled with what to do next.
that there was essential work that needed to be done. You had feedback from the community, giving you a temperature of how much is too much, what could be supported. And ultimately that led to another survey this past September of polling the community, the taxpayers, to see what would be supported. That feedback was shared 2 weeks ago, and now tonight's discussion and really the deliberations during the month of October are whether or not to go forward. So some highlights from the meeting last night and the recommendations to the board is that we move forward with a $6.2 million project, that we seek voter approval in early December of 2013, and we'll talk about the timeline shortly. That will allow us to begin a project in the spring or summer of 2013, depending on the state ed approval process. We believe that if the voters approve the bond as early as December 2013, we might receive authorization to start certain aspects earlier, meaning right after the new year, certain projects regarding technology and technology infrastructure. The committee also wrestled with the idea of a construction manager, essentially a third party that the board would employ to make sure the work gets done on time, under budget, so on and so forth. The committee wrestled with this for quite some time yesterday and essentially decided that the folks that we have on staff, Mr. Merlini, Enrique, Matthew, that the project is so specific and really is not that difficult, for lack of a better term, that our own staff will be able to manage the implementation of this bond. And lastly, the last recommendation is to seek authorization for existing capital bond dollars from a project that the board did in 2008. So we'll talk about how finances that are available from 2008 can coexist with a $6.2 million project, and I'll get there shortly. So we have technology needs. We have $2.5 million of technology needs, and I'll invite Matthew Swerdloff to give us a little more detail and go into breadth and depth. So come on up. Do you want to use this or yours? Either one. However, whatever you want to do.
Thank you. So I will be brief. I just wanted to give you a little context for the technology infrastructure portion of the bond, and I'm really calling it technology infrastructure because that's really the focus. The focus of this is kind of the backbone of our network. And before I get into the two main areas, I wanted to just kind of give you the broad context of what our technology infrastructure does, because it's very different than it was 10, 20, 30 years ago, certainly. And really, everything we do relies on technology in one way or another, and in some things very heavily, some things minimally. But we start with, our security system. Of course, all our security cameras are all running over our network, so that's very dependent on having a network that's reliable and has adequate bandwidth. Sorry, some of this is not easy to see. Our parent portal, our main communication tool with parents, is something that's running on our technology network. And then, not unimportant, much of our instruction, and I'm not really going to be talking about instruction that much, but certainly our delivery of instruction in the classroom is requiring technology now. Our student information system, when we find that system is unavailable, things really come to a screeching halt in our schools because we cannot access information that we need about students. Teachers cannot take attendance. The office can't get phone numbers. It's very difficult to function without that. Our data network. So all of our data in the entire district is housed in this building in one closet, which makes for a very efficient and cost-saving scenario, but it also leads to a vulnerable scenario in that if our network between the campuses is not up to speed, it's very difficult to access that data. Our payroll and human resources system. So we are very dependent on our servers and our networks and all that being reliable so that we can pay our folks and manage our staff efficiently. Our telephone system is fully integrated with our wired network. So again, when we have problems with our network, we also have problems with our phones, and that's obviously not something we want to have too much experience with. And finally, our HVA system, and Anthony will be talking about some of the needs there, but those systems run over our networks. So the communication between the controllers for the heating in the various buildings all come back to this building. And again, all very dependent on a reliable network infrastructure. So that's kind of a context. And really there's two kind of main focuses that this infrastructure bond will address. And the first one is reliability of service. So right now we have less than reliable service. And the areas that need to be addressed are our servers, which are storing all our data for the district. And again, several years ago when I first got here, we had servers in every building spread throughout the district, which is the way it was done back then. And that's good because it's more redundant. So if one building loses power, the other four are still good. It's not good because it's not as efficient. You have to run around to different buildings, and it's more to manage, and it's harder to manage. Over the past 8 or 9 years, we've migrated, and everything is in this building, which saves a lot of money in management. It centralizes, it makes it easier to manage, but it's also, you're more vulnerable. So we need to make sure that our servers are replaced before there's a problem, and we haven't been able to do that in a reliable way. Cabling has become a big problem in a couple of ways. Many of our classrooms were just not wired properly to begin with. Obviously, none of the schools were wired for networks when they were built, so it was all kind of done after. Many of the classrooms are set up properly, many are not. The cables are in the wrong spot. We've got people running extension cords up through the ceiling or around the side of the classroom. Just causes all kinds of problems. Some of the cabling, because we've done so much renovation over the years, sometimes there's interference, there's crosstalk between the cables and between other systems. So we have a lot of cabling work that we need to do to make sure that computers operate quickly and reliably in the classrooms. Switches are the core electronics that power the entire network. The switches that we have now are all 8 or 9 years old, 8.5 years old, and they really should be replaced every 5 years. So not only are they getting to the point where, so a typical switch has 48 ports or 48 spots where you can plug in a network component. Many of the switches have ports which are no longer functioning. So a 48 port switch might have only 40 live ports, and that gets to be a problem because we're just running out of space. Power in our closets, again, none of the closets that house our network infrastructure were really built for that. Some are utility closets, some are storage closets. What we need in all those closets is dedicated, power-protected, surge-protected power, clean power, so that there's no variation and no fluctuation which damages the equipment. Again, air conditioning, those closets need to be air conditioned. We've had a lot of problems over the years, again, particularly in this building where everything is housed with things just getting too hot. And electronics and heat is not a good combination. Security in those closets, all of those closets need to be secured. This is something that's come up repeatedly in our audits over the years, that those server closets, we should not have people other than people with specific permissions going into those closets at all. And then furniture. One of the big problems that we've had in this district is the fact that we have to, unlike a business where people move into their office and they set up and they kind of just clean around everything, we empty every classroom every summer. So we have 1,200 computers that get disconnected and reconnected every summer. And that makes for a really unpleasant September. And actually we're in October and we're still kind of recovering from that. So one piece of this project is to create built-in computer shelves in all the classrooms so that the computers can be connected and stay connected and without legs that are bolted to the walls, so that we don't have this problem every summer, because it really sets back teachers. Every year I hear this, and it's just a very difficult thing to address. And I know districts that have done this, Peekskill the new middle school, they've done this. They have these nice, it's nothing fancy, nice built-in tables. And it just eliminates a huge problem, and it saves a lot of time, and it saves a lot of lost instructional time. The other piece that I hope to address with this bond is equity of access. And because of the way we funded areas of technology, there is a significant lack of equity between different buildings and different grade levels. As far as computer access, that we've managed because we've done that through the regular budget. But smart boards, laptops, and wireless networks, it's very spotty. Some buildings have, the high school has a lot of wireless, middle school has none, Furnace Woods has a little bit, Frank G has a little bit more. So we want to try and create some equity so that all of our students and all of our schools have the same access to the same technology. The same thing for smart boards. We have some classrooms and some grade levels that still have nothing, some that have just projectors, and some that have had smart boards with projectors for 2, 3, 4 years. And then finally, laptops. This is related a little bit to Park because if Park does happen, we definitely will need laptops, but it's also related to instruction because we definitely have, in the elementary schools in particular, our teachers are asking for ways to use technology more, and lightweight laptops that they could use in the classroom would help with that. So that's really the focus of the bond. That's kind of a quick overview. If you have any questions, happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'll turn it back to Mr. Hochreiter. Say it again?
What's our network reliability?
As far as a percent,
Yeah, do you have an idea?
depends on when you ask me. This week it's pretty. Yesterday at noon it's pretty bad. When it's down, it's 0. When it's up, it's never 100%. I'll tell you that because the middle school in Furnace Woods in particular always have problems, and it's because of the distance, the geographical distance, and the closet electronics over there. And so they're always having problems with computers that take a long time to log in, or they log in and they don't get all their files and icons. So this building is probably the most reliable because this is the core of the whole network.
Now, when you go back, can you go back to that, the circle there? Yeah. Actually, I like that graphic.
I have it on my laptop.
I made it myself. Me and
I'm
Microsoft.
having a senior moment, yeah. No. But what's important?
There it is, Charles.
No, but like if the delivery of instruction, if we've got instruction and our network is down, then it just doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen, and it's really interesting because this has changed over the last few years. 5 years ago, if the network was down, people kind of went about their business, and they complained and they grumbled, and they couldn't do their email, they couldn't get on the internet. Now it's entirely different because people have their lessons planned, and they have lesson packages that are designed around the smartboard or the projector. And I try to say that, be as positive as I can and say, well, you got to be adaptable, you got to be flexible. But if you're teaching 4 classes in the high school and you've got your lessons, you've spent time preparing smartboard lessons, and then all of a sudden you have to shift gears and you have no media to use, it's challenging. So it's a big impact.
Students are using it as well.
Right.
So I mean,
So cute,
it's not even like one person impact. It's everybody's
Right,
impacted.
right.
So it's
So at the elementary school, it's very different when, in a lot of the schools, in the classes, the part of the kids' morning routine is coming in and they do attendance and they do their lunch on the smartboard and they do little warm-up activities and math activities, and that really changes the day when that's not available. Carson?
The current problems that we've been having over, the last 6 months where we've had the outages, and as we keep getting these emails on the board that we've had shut down, will those problems be addressed with this bond?
Yes.
And if you can maybe just elaborate, tell
Yep.
the audience some of those problems so they understand we are actually living, we're in like kind of a dire strait right now because these problems are starting.
Okay, so the problems that we've been having are related to, there have been several, and one has been servers dying, and that's because they're 8 years old. And just so you know, think of your home computer lasting 8 years. That's not very likely. But then think of it being on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, running all the time for 8 years. It's just not realistic. So servers are on all the time. The hard drives are constantly spinning. During the day, they're getting a lot of activity, and they're just not going to last that long. So we had to replace kind of on an emergency basis last spring one of our main servers. So that when that server's down, everything's down. We had a problem earlier in the year with our firewall, which is another piece of network electronics similar to the switches that protects our network from the outside. We were able to do some temporary patches on that, but again, it really is time to be replaced. The network connectivity issues, that's cabling and infrastructure. We have not addressed that. There's also some power issues, in particular at the middle school. There's some, the special ed offices have been not happy with me because they keep losing internet access throughout the day. It goes on and off and on and off. And that's because the power is flickering. And it's just, it breaks the connection and then puts it right back, but it takes a few minutes to recycle and reconnect. The only thing this won't address is getting blocked as spammers. That's a user problem. That's not a technology problem.
You mentioned a couple times 8 years. I know Enrique brought this point up, and we talked about what is the term, the life of what we're going to be funding here? Is it 8 years, 20 years, 10 years? Because I know we want to go out to the public, and we want to. One of the things I may be stealing thunder. We're going to finance it accordingly, so this way the bond is the useful life of it. We're not going beyond that. So
of the $2.5 million, about half of it we can expect to last about 10 years. About half, about 5 years. So we talked about a 7 or 8 year financing for the whole project.
But we also talked about being very decisive because we could borrow different chunks according to the life of everything, right?
Right.
So if something's going to be 10 years, we borrow that much for 10 years. If something's going to be 5,
Well, there's
right?
also discussion about using the other bond money.
That's correct. Unless we're talking about very small amounts that the investors won't take, that's why we said in average 7 years. You know, if we're talking $1.5 million, 10 years, and $1 million, 5 years, then we will be able to do 1 and 1.5. But if we're talking $500,000 and $2 million, then probably we'll do 7 years, $2.5 million.
And the project is, by its design, it's really, there's priorities. So this is really the high priority stuff, and that's the stuff that we would have to get borrow the money on first. This stuff does need to be done, but it can wait till next summer. All this stuff I would like to get started on as soon as we get authorization in the spring.
Be done while the students are in school, or would it be done during breaks and such?
Much of it can be done some of it can be done during the day. The stuff in the closets, anything that's in the halls and the classrooms would have to be after hours. But contractors will certainly do that.
Well, I was thinking like shutting things down.
Right.
and
The
such.
big stuff, the switches, the servers, that has to be done over the breaks.
Okay.
And we have to time it so that, do it in phases.
Once everything is brought up to speed going forward, are we going to be able to set up a regular replacement schedule for these things so that we don't get into this position again?
That's a question for for all of you.
The budget has been zero,
You
has not
need
moved.
that's something that I would
Your
recommend.
budget has not moved.
I'd say 5 years. It's been
4 or
pretty
5
flat.
years, right?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
I think what you need to think about is doing the same thing that you've done for the computers,
Right.
for this other infrastructure, and spreading it out over 5 or 10 years with a lease of a little bit each year, so that and this gives you some breathing room of maybe a couple of years, and then
If you
we
could
can
create
start.
that schedule so that we could
Yeah,
review that,
sure.
that would absolutely
So
be
we can, we can take all the infrastructure, put it on a schedule, and say, okay, we're going to replace a little bit each year for over a 10-year cycle.
absolutely. Thank you.
Part of our facilities committee meeting, both on Anthony's side of it as well as Matthew's, we've basically been very bare bone for the last 5 or 6 years in both those departments. But we need to start putting some money aside and looking at ways within the budget, but we're talking about that now, so we can start doing this so we don't have to go out to the public every 3 or 4 years. It builds it in, and so it doesn't hurt as much going forward that way. So we are talking about, we are going to start looking at that, plan better, and start doing it. So every 5 or 6 years you do this, every 4 years, like blacktopping every 5 or 6, whatever we deem that's going to be necessary, we try to budget for that and start appropriating funds for that going forward. So.
Great. I just had one more quick question, so if you're expanding on that, that's fine. My other question was just, why are the classrooms emptied out every summer?
To be cleaned.
Oh, for
They have to
cleaning.
be
Cleaning.
cleaned.
Yeah, they scrub.
And because they strip the floors and wax them,
to
you
move
can't
the
leave furniture in
all
there.
the furniture has to come out, and
To do the floors
there's
and
nothing with,
Cleaning off all the
that,
graffiti and-
we don't have built-in things for the computers, so most teachers put them on their tables or wherever, so.
I guess to go back to my senior moment.
You want the graphic again?
Telephone security.
They knew right where to go.
Good job.
Telephone and security, when we were talking about network reliability, I don't know that everyone knows how much our telephone system is tied to our internet system now. Could
Right.
you expand on that?
Sure.
And security is also tied, and it's also run through it. And you were saying the HVAC systems, the heating and air conditioning.
right.
So if the networks are down, those things aren't happening.
Right. So what happens is each campus, actually each building, has a node to the phone system. So there's a piece of hardware in the closet that controls the phone in that building. But if that building can't connect to this building, it cannot get out. The phone calls are only within the building. If this building can't get out to the internet, there's no phone service out of the district anywhere, because all the phones go over the internet through, it's a package of voice and data. So all of our phone service outside the district goes through that same connection. So that's been, again, when we put in this phone system maybe 6 or 7 years ago, it was a huge cost savings. We saved a lot of money from what we were paying before, but it's the same kind of thing where you centralize, and the trade-off of this cost savings is the vulnerability of a single point of failure.
Do you have, because a lot of times in corporations they'll have almost like redundancy. Like if they have a T1, they'll have a backup backup like two T1s from different providers.
Right.
Just on the security portion of it, what happens if we go down and something catastrophic happens in the building? How do we have no communication out? Do we have like a backup?
We have
two plain old POTS lines, right?
We have, every building has copper
Okay.
phone lines,
They
so
do.
for alarms and phone systems. They do have a rollover line in the principal's office so that they can make an outgoing 911
So we have
call.
that. Yep. That's fine.
We go out and scream, ah!
Could you just describe for the public the PARC assessment and why we need the capacity
Sure.
to administer this? Because I think that's a crucial.
Sure. So PARC is a consortium of 24 or 25 states that are
It's not the only one.
that is developing the online assessments to go along with the new Common Core standards. So not only do we have new instructional standards, but with those will come new assessments. And the idea of PARC is that those assessments would be best delivered on the computer. And whether you agree with that or not, chances are it's coming to a school district near you pretty soon. The state of New York has not officially adopted that, but the commissioner keeps saying this is the way we're going. The Board of Regents has not officially acted, but what he has said repeatedly in public sessions and in writing is that we're moving to online assessments. Even if it's not PARC, it may be our own, it may be another vendor, but it's going to be online assessments. What they've said all along is that those assessments would start in the spring of 2014, so over a year away. But for us to be prepared for that, we need to make sure that we have enough portable devices to test a grade level at a time, 3 through 8, in one sitting. So the idea of, and I said laptops, they may end up being Chromebooks, they may end up being tablets, they need to be some kind of a mobile device, we don't know what, so that we can, the whole second grade and the 3 schools can be sitting, taking a test at the same time on the same device the same day. That's the idea of PARC.
And even if New York State doesn't adopt it on their timeline, they will eventually. I think.
They will eventually, and it's although it's going to be a challenge for every school district and us as well. It's not a bad thing to have more mobile devices in the schools because we're not going to get them and put them in the closet until May 23rd and take them out, and all of a sudden everyone's going to test them. It's something that they will be using, all the time.
The reality is, this is how our students are learning.
Absolutely.
It's not
This isn't changing. We're going forward. This is from here.
This is a central part of education. Essential part of
It
education.
is.
But what that means is that we have to have enough devices in a building to test every student in that grade, the largest grade.
Correct.
At one time, and the bandwidth capacity to send that data across.
Right. So
at
these are
one time.
devices that would connect wirelessly to our network, so that's why we need the Wi-Fi within the buildings. And then from our network, they would go out to the internet. So, and I don't know if you've heard some of the disaster stories in other states with these assessments happening and servers crashing. And fortunately, I think most of the problems have not been on the school district side. They've been on the testing company side. They weren't prepared for 50 school districts connecting all at once. But we still have to be prepared for that.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Actually another part of your rubric. But the parent portal, there's a mandated part of that. We have to have a parent portal, and that's got to be up and available. There's another one that's going on. We were technology leadership this week, and New York State has one, but that's a mandate, a requirement that you have a parent portal up. and we have a good one. But, I mean, Matthew's already started on getting a committee together to select a device for the park implementation. He's asked for volunteers so that we're moving forward to pick the, you know, to set up a rubric, a choice rubric and specifications, so, you know.
That just reminded me of one thing. I just want to take a moment to say our parent portal is just phenomenal. You know, parents use it all the time, every day. And,
They do, I know.
And parents in other districts don't have that. You know, and talked to a lot of parents, and to
Right.
go on the website and see what grades, what's been turned in, what hasn't, is phenomenal for
You can
parents.
stay, you can stay ahead of any problems.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's
If the parents are going on it.
Well, I'll just, I know Mr. Hochreiter mentioned this, but the next piece of this is the app, which is going to be similar but provide different functionality, more of calendar, news events, board videos. If you want to watch this board video on your train ride to New York City, you can do that.
Relive it.
So that's
we can
coming
do
out soon.
we can do
If you want to relive it.
we can do webcams in the school and put little
Thank you
tracking
very
devices
much.
on our
All right,
kids.
thanks.
Thanks, Matthew.
Yeah, that's scary.
So moving
Everybody was talking.
moving from technology needs to infrastructure needs, Mr. Merlini will join the conversation, talking about and highlighting some of the infrastructure needs that the committee would like the board to consider in the next bond. We don't have a visual for this, but that's okay. So we are on this slide. We're estimating $3.7 million of infrastructure needs, and I'll let Anthony go into detail on the 6 items that we have bulleted here.
You just may want to mention too, because we talked in the survey, just so we're clear, we're not going to be going out for the science classrooms, and so this, I mean, that's something that we chose.
Correct.
Yeah, we decided that this is what we're going for right here. So science classrooms at this point are not going to be discussed.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Just want to expand on some of these points here for the infrastructure needs that we have planned for this upcoming proposed bond. Security and safety, we just want to continue with what we've already started to implement throughout our buildings. Doors, interior and exterior doors, hardening our ways inside the building, and once you're inside the building, hardening our classrooms. Cameras, security systems throughout the buildings, PAs, public address systems inside the buildings and outside the buildings, making sure that we can address individuals on the outside of the building as well as the inside of the building. Intercoms, we've moved a lot of classrooms around from sides of the buildings to different sides of the building. We've added spaces, and not all those interior spaces have intercoms to get back and forth to the main office. Lighting on the exterior of the building. Some of our exterior lighting has failed, or we want to enhance that, so we just have better security outside. And fencing around our buildings as well. And some of it's come into repair, some of it needs to be upgraded, and some of it we need to install new stuff.
Let me remind everyone that if we do it next year, we'll get an extra 10% state aid that will end at the end of next year. No, on the security, only the security.
Next item there we've been talking about for a while is our septic systems out at Blue Mountain Middle School in Furnace Woods. Over the last couple of years, the criteria that we have to meet from the DEC and Westchester County Health Department has changed. So our effluent on the outstream for total chlorine residual, they've lowered the requirements for that, and the ammonia and nitrogen limits also. It's also an antiquated system. It's an old system, so the pumps need to be upgraded. The chlorination system needs to be upgraded, and different processes along that system need to be upgraded and make sure that we can stay in compliance over the next several years. So that's one of the things we have to take a hard-nosed look at, because it is something that if we don't meet our criteria and we get fined, we can wind up getting some hefty fines over the course of time. So right now we have a consultant. We've been working with a consultant in terms of doing this project, and we have to do it pretty much no matter what, so it would just be easier with the bond. Plumbing, we just have systems, we have a lot of old buildings, we have a lot of old plumbing systems throughout the buildings. We have some domestic water lines that are leaking. We have some sinks, some old water-cooled refrigeration units that we want to change over to air-cooled. That'll help in saving our water conservation throughout the buildings. I want to add a backflow preventer out of Blue Mountain Middle School. We don't currently have one on our domestic. We have one on the boiler lines, but we don't have on the domestic. It would just be good to protect the system. Water filtration, we're looking at something at the high school, doing some water filtration on some of the systems that we have here. HVAC, our building management system, over the last several years when we've done our bonds, we added our additions. We've tied into a computerized system to run our boilers, computerized system to run our univentilators in a lot of the classrooms, HVAC, air conditioning equipment as well. We want to continue that process, enhance those systems so we get more control over all these different types of entities throughout the buildings. That also helps with our energy conservation program that we've been going about with Synergistics that Dan has been implementing over the last year. Ventilation at the middle school, that's always been an issue out there. We want to try to enhance that system, get better airflow in that building. The system is old. If you're ever in that building and during the shoulder months when you're coming in and out of the seasons, it can get very stuffy on the third floor, etc. So we want to try to enhance that system as well. Air conditioning throughout the district, we have some repairs that we have to make. We have some replacements, we have some upgrades, etc. And this bond would handle some of that too as well. Electrical systems, as Matthew alluded to, there are some power issues that we've always had throughout the buildings. And I think, we've added additions onto the buildings out of Blue Mountain. We've added on in our electrical requirements. We've added smart boards, we've added computers, etc. And where we're tapping into some of these old panels and the sub-panels in the building, some of them need to be upgraded. Some of the old system was daisy chained from room to room. So now when we're doing work in one room, it's shutting down the other room. So things like that need to be split. They need to have a hard-nosed look at how we can maybe isolate those systems so they're just running classrooms with now the extra power requirements in some of those rooms. In Furnace Woods, we have some issues too, and in the high school as well. So we'll take a look at everything when we talk about electrical. For the building exterior, we have some window panels of Frank G. Lindsay. They're rusted on the outside. We have some lintels out there that we want to take a look at, see what we need to scrape and paint, replace. Roof maintenance, repair, just like anything with your house. The roofs, you have to do constant maintenance on them, constant repairs. We're talking about a lot of square footage here throughout the district. And some issues have arisen at the high school, small at the middle school, and small at Furnace Woods, but still some things that need to be addressed. Then we have some windows that have been failing in terms of the mechanical systems that run those. We're going to try to do some of that in-house, but this bond will also help alleviate some of that pressure. And then some paving throughout the district. We're going to try to throw some of that in there as well as whatever we can, fit in. We'll try to do what we can. A lot of the projects that you see here, they'll get the vast majority of things in terms of the locks, the hardware, the doors, the paving, but there's always going to be something like Carson said. You're always going to have to, have some sort of replacement plan, going in the future because things break. The panic hardware is used, the doors, the locks. You're going in and out of classrooms on a constant daily basis. The pavement as well. So whether we do this now or later, you're going to have a constant, maintenance along for all these items. So it's just your general infrastructure repairs.
Well, we had a couple husband and wife community member came in. They were talking about the lighting outside here in the high school. I think it was last year. Will that be something we'll be looking to address, is to enhance the lighting out there where I guess it's not that good and there were some concerns right over here?
Definitely.
Okay. And
Actually,
both sides.
There's both sides of the building. You have that side of the building and the driveway. We've been saying we're going to, try to do a project and try to do something, but the lighting can get very expensive when you start getting into it. For some reason, I think in the 03 project, when they put in the additions and everything, they severed some lines when they upgraded the electric, and so now north driveway and the south driveway, both sets of lighting for the street lighting doesn't work. So that's something we would definitely look at to try to. Now, the rest of the building is good. You got the track that lights up that side and a couple other things, but sometimes getting out of this building can be a little dicey.
Yep.
Could solar lights work on those?
Excuse me?
Could we put solar on those and not have to run wires? I mean, I just thought of it. It just
You
put a
could
collector.
I don't know what you would need to run it. You made some possibility. I think if we do anything, most of it like we would do is going to be LED. You know, going forward in the future, we're looking at doing some LED lighting out in Blue Mountain right now. Again, you know, what we do here in facilities never stops. So even though we're going for a bond or whatever, you know, we try to do projects in-house with our electrician and our maintenance guys. So, you know, we constantly, you know, we have wall packs that when they burn out, we try to upgrade them, you know, to LED right now. So, you know, whatever we can do to save.
Yeah, actually, you're talking about LED. I was at P and Putnam, Northern Westchester, BOCES Facilities Committee last week, and they displayed in their gymnasium auditorium. They put in LED lights in there, and they were talking about the cost savings, and also about because they use it as a dual function facility, they can dim the LEDs, and it really makes it much more functional and helpful for those kids, especially the disabled kids. And so they're singing the praises of the LED lights.
Well, they've come a long way. I mean, the LEDs, you know, they used to have a lot of issues with them. You couldn't dim them. They were having problems with them heating up, especially with the big, you know, street lights. There's a huge heat sink on the back of it, and they were having problems with those heating up and causing failures and going on fire. And so they've changed a lot of that. They've upgraded a lot of it. But a lot of what we've done with the energy performance contract, going from the high dome lights in the gymnasiums, going over to the T8s that are all occupancy. Each bank of lights has its own occupancy sensor on. If you ever walked into the gym, you'll see when they're off, they'll click on as you know, cross the gym floor. So, you know, if you're not using the one side of the gym and you're just on the one other side of the gym, all those other lights stay off. Instead of years ago when we came in there, we used to turn all the lights on. So that helps out a lot as well.
Have we looked into anything along the lines of possibly going solar within the district? I was just recently down in Jersey for a lacrosse tournament this summer, and they had the big solar panels outside. But that basically, it lights the electricity for the whole district. I mean, it would say something along the line in the future. If there's grants out there, we could look at just ways we could save money, save the community money, because we could actually light the buildings almost free, and then whatever is excess, sell that to the thing. So, are we looking into anything along those lines?
We've tried to do it several times through grants, and our electrical provider is NYPA with Con Ed, and NYPA and Con Ed doesn't have those programs in place. NYSERDA has a lot of those programs in place. I was just approached maybe about a month ago from a solar company, and you know, they got me all excited that we were going to be able to do something, and we started talking, and then they said, well, who's your power supplier? And I said, well, it's NYPA, and they said, well, we're not going to be able to do anything because we don't get any rebates or anything back from them. So it's a little harder to go that avenue, but I think as, you know, I've seen more and more avenues come open to us as, you know, time's gone on. So I think if we just keep pushing and we keep driving to it, I think eventually those avenues will be open to us.
All right, good.
Any other questions? I'm sorry? We will, we're just going to finish with the timeline and the finances.
Okay. I'll just ask quickly, there's just on this sheet, the tech was 1.75, and then this one it's 2.5.
Yep, we'll talk
you'll
about
talk
that
about
shortly.
that. Okay,
Yep.
that's fine.
So finances, and Marion, I think this will get right to the heart of the matter. $6.2 million project that includes contingency and incidentals, hovering around 42%. When you put together a capital project to the state, you have to, by law, include essentially a cushion for incidentals. Oftentimes, it's 20% for design, and 20% or a little bit more for contingencies, insurances, those sort of fees. So 42%. I think for this figure, it's right around 42% was the figure our architects put together. What you see on your spreadsheet are the actual costs of the, for lack of a better term, the stuff, and then we took the We took the 1.75 and the 2.06, totaled that up, and then added the contingencies on top of that. 10% aidable because of the district's wealth ratio in the eyes of the state. We believe that project will be aided at 10%. We also have $659,000 available from a June 2008 approved bond, and I'll talk about that in a minute in terms of what that might look like, of how to authorize those funds. But there are two questions that we have to continue to deliberate on. Will security expenses be aided beyond 10%? A week ago, we talked about perhaps some additional incentive money from the state to, for lack of a better term, incentivize school districts to strengthen their security systems, and that the state would aid a little bit more of that money. We have to continue to seek that out and determine if that was just rumor or if there is some truth to that and what that would look like. But that would be coming back probably after the project is approved, and sometimes when you're aided at a level different than what you come out of the bond at, you're given the money, or you're given the aid that can be allocated to the current project or a future project. And as Carson alluded to when Matthew was presenting, how long should we finance the bond? For the life expectancy of the equipment, Matthew talked about that, somewhere between 7 and 10 years, or 5 and 10 years. And as Enrique mentioned about trying to chunk the technology portion of the bond so we could borrow and pay that off during the life expectancy of the equipment. The question around the $565,000 is that money was approved for specific purposes back in 2008. And in order to apply that $659 to a current project, we need voter authorization. We need a separate resolution asking the public to allow us to authorize those expenses for a different purpose than what they were originally purposed for back in 2008. So if we move forward, there would be two resolutions. One resolution would be for $6.2 million, and there would be essentially a long paragraph of what we're authorized to spend $6.2 million on. And a second resolution is authorizing the district to use $659 toward the $6.2. So what would the project cost? $6.2 million minus $659,000. So why don't we go out for a bond at some quick math, $5.6 million? Because if one gets approved and the other doesn't, we're up the creek. We're going to reduce the project and then have a discussion of, okay, gentlemen, of all the must-haves, what is a really must-have? So the idea is to bond the entire, what I would call, my words, liability of the project as we know it. And if we also have voter approval to authorize $659, then that's a second set of discussions that the board can have. The timeline is pretty straightforward. It's a very similar timeline to what you saw a week ago, and as we discussed at the end of August. The difference here is by moving perhaps a little bit quicker through the deliberation phase, we could offer the public an opportunity to vote as early as December 10th. What that does is that gives us an additional week to get to state ed, to start our processes, file our paperwork, have everything certified, which could pay great dividends to allow us to start some work earlier. This would include a trip to Albany. Enrique, myself, some other folks going up and knocking on Albany's door and saying, please give us authorization to start pieces of this a little quicker than others. So timing is important. There really is a big difference in 1 week. So our next steps, in order to ask the public to vote and to meet a December 10th deadline, we suggest that by October 23rd, or at our next board meeting in 2 weeks, we need to have some direction, and we need to have board resolutions on the following. To approve the committee recommendations that Matthew and Anthony spoke about in terms of the project, the scope, and the cost. which includes $6.2 million. We would have a resolution that the board would approve that, and it would be the actual language that voters would vote on December 10th, and also a resolution to authorize the $659 to be applied to the project. Once we have that, we start our 45-day waiting period where we have a legal obligation to communicate to the public and share information, no different than when we do a typical budget vote in each spring. Allows us to network and communicate with different stakeholder groups. As you heard last week, we met with the Buchanan seniors, Verplank seniors. Allows us an opportunity to hold parent forums and do more Q&A about what's in the project, what's not. As Carson said, is this really meat and potatoes? And show us and go through the scope of the project. It allows us to communicate with the public and hopefully build some goodwill that this board is committed to doing what's essential and necessary to keep us going forward. And my words are kind of, we heard you. This board has, I think, done a great job of asking for input and some direction from the public in terms of what they'll support and what they won't. And so I think you're positioned in a really good place right now to let the public know you heard them, but that there are some must-haves that are essential to keeping the guts of this organization moving forward. So any questions? Charles, Carson, and Lori serve on the committee. Obviously, Enrique, myself, Anthony, and Matthew are there. We have a couple weeks to think, ponder, and deliberate, but we're at the point now where our timeline is shrinking, and some direction and commitment from the board would certainly help.
I'd love to hear from the audience at this
Sure.
point.
Do you want to? Okay.
John Mattis from Montrose. This has been a very open and inclusive and well thought out project, and I agree these are all must-dos, and we understand why the time frame is what it is, and I'll support this.
Good evening, John DeBenedictis. I got a question, guys, you know that. I see a familiar identifier, KSQ again. Now, have they been already issued some sort of agreement? Or why was KSQ chosen again, and how was it chosen? Did the facilities committee open this up to other architectural firms and say, hey, we got a little project here, what are your recommendations? Or was KSQ, how was KSQ given what it seems to be, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, because in the board docs it said it's a KSQ presentation. How was it derived that KSQ is doing this, and was it open to other architectural firms? And will all the work be done and given to our local guys if possible? Are they going to be included in, like, there's plenty of people locally who can do septic fields, and they can do windows and painting and things like this, and they're capable, they're good people, they're not, that's not some guy with a little Toyota truck and a shovel. I mean, these are guys who are real people. Now, are we going to make an emphasis to make sure that they get at least a chance to give us a decent price? And like I say, I don't know how, we're looking at KSQ again. How'd that, how'd it happen?
It's a company that
I'm
we
sorry?
essentially used most of the information that we had from the previous bond. In terms of, rather than reinvent the wheel, much of this was in the original bond. If you look, the septic was in there, the infrastructure, it's just expanded. And
Right.
we have, if I could finish, please. We also have Matthew and Anthony who've gone through, Dr. Swerloff and Mr. Merlini who've gone through this and made sure that the costs and the needs and the expectations are in line with our needs and expectations. Of course, we would love to use any local, I mean, it's a function for that. It's a function of bidding and how that goes. If there's an opportunity, absolutely. Absolutely, we would prefer to use. I mean, we'd always rather use a local, but.
Right, which it should be.
Of course.
These
So
people
that's
pay
a
our
non-issue.
taxes. But the question I have again, though, is what I don't understand now. If we're not going to have a contract manager, I can't quite figure out what KSQ is going to do here. In other words, if we're saying, okay, this is KSQ's presentation, what are they going to do for us, and how much is it going to cost us? Because normally, if a corporation was to build a new building or something, they would put out to bid several architectural firms, and they would say, look, we want to build X, and they would get various proposals. Now, this sounds like KSQ has already kind of been given the package. And what are they going to do for us?
The work's already been done. It's in terms of, in the sense that it's much of it is information that we used when we had the original bond. I mean, again, the septic, our need for the septic has not changed dramatically.
Right, I know it
the
hasn't.
parameters don't change. Much of the technology has not changed. Again, we have Matthew, Dr. Swerdloff and Mr. Merlini helping out, giving us their input as well. And we're not using a construction manager because we are using these gentlemen and Mr. Catalan as well in-house.
One of the things with
I'm sorry?
One of the things with KSQ, from the line of business that I'm in now, KSQ does a lot of the work for a lot of the districts in the.
You got to speak a little louder. I can't hear you.
KSQ does a lot of the work for a lot of the districts in the area, and what that allows us to do is they're able to help us when it comes to the costing to come to the how much things cost, because they're doing Croton right now. When you were asking the questions about the science rooms, that's where they came from. They got those numbers from basically looking at what it cost Croton there. So I don't know where you're going with this question, but what I'm going to tell you is KSQ, I've seen a lot of bids come across my desk recently that I'm bidding work on, and KSQ is involved, and I've just heard from the contractors, very reputable organization and no problems. So
I understand that.
I don't know where you're going with this, because it
where
seems
I'm
like
going
you're
is
saying
the
that
fact
there's alluding that there's something
if KSQ is the
on here.
architectural firm, is there any reason why we don't ask another architectural firm to give us a package and see if there's any differences in their numbers versus KSQ's? I think this is just good business practice. And you can say, yes, we know KSQ has performed in a certain level, but the fact is you're not opening up the process from the sound of it. And I don't think that's the best way the district can spend its money. Maybe it is. And if it is, fine. But it doesn't appear that way. Now, I mean,
Marion maybe can answer this a little bit, but it's a professional service contract.
I don't think we need to get into this discussion now. I'm just going to say it was the board's decision to hire KSQ because KSQ knows and understands our district. They do yearly audits on our buildings. They just finished the 5-year project. Why would I give and spend a month or 2 months of my time with another firm that I will have to explain absolutely every building when these people already know my buildings?
John,
that's good business.
But much of the work, the groundwork for this fund was done in the initial one. Why reinvent the wheel? Why bring somebody else in to do the work that was done and already done? I mean,
maybe it had
part
something.
to the construction manager part of the question. In the discussion yesterday, years ago, 20, 30 years ago, they said as late as 15 years ago, architects did a large part of construction management. Construction management firms came into being when building got more complex and difficult. And there was also a need to maybe split it out a little bit so that you had some oversight or objective view of the building. We decided, since these were very specific, relatively limited projects, that our staff plus the architect could oversee it and complete it. And they will screen the contractors, and they will do other work and oversight. So that was the reason why we didn't want to bring in the extra cost of a construction manager.
John, it's a professional service.
I'm sorry?
For a professional service, you don't have to bid it out. And because KSQ is so familiar and we're using their stuff, we felt very comfortable have to bid that out.
I know.
So we went to a very reputable company who knows us very well. And because they already planned this last year, we went with them again since it's all their stuff. And the way they get paid is through, it's only the architect, not a manager. They will get some of the soft costs because of that. But very simply put, it's a professional service. We don't have to bid that out. And again, we went with them because they are so reputable and know our district so well.
Well, I guess,
That
you
was
know,
it.
I guess the education world works entirely different than other, because you couldn't do this except in a situation like this. You just couldn't. If you were working for, and
You're a doctor, though. You would go to somebody reputable who you felt
But,
safe
you know,
with,
again,
right?
John, if
this
we
is what
did
you've
this
done.
work they did this work last year, it's done. That's not going to change. The parameters of the septic system are not going to change now or a year. Why would we bring somebody else in and pay them again for what's already been done?
Well, I thought we didn't pay as KSQ.
No,
last
but I'm
time.
saying but we would if we had to bring, but I mean, what is the point?
There was no payment made to them.
I appreciate that, but I mean, why would we have somebody do that work again? It's a septic system, John. It's not.
It's still 2
We're
years
not
old.
sending somebody to the moon. It's a septic system.
Right.
They've been,
in fact, I'm very familiar with this septic
But
system.
I mean, we're not talking, it's not a lot of
John, there's no smoke.
evolution here.
Well,
There's no
okay,
smoke and mirrors
but I
that
think
you
that
noticed in the last one.
it
We
always
been
is
very
better
forthright.
And what
to
we've
have a
chosen-
wide open system, and this seems to be somewhat closed, and I think this bond will pass personally because it's low enough, and people will be, like I say, they're afraid, the kids will be contaminated, and we won't have the technology to keep the kids going. So this will probably pass. But I think people do question how open and how much information are you giving the paying public. It's not like it used to be even 10 years ago.
I really want to take exception because I have to tell you, we have been nothing but open. We have provided everything. I know you have a question about KSQ, but KSQ, look it up, is an extremely reputable firm that has handled that has handled the school districts throughout our area. They know the contractors. They know what they're doing. And the fact that they've already created this information and they've created this portfolio of work for us that they can. And we have Mr. Merlini and Dr. Swerdloff, who are entirely capable, who will act as our construction managers, who will be doing this. Nobody's being hoodwinked here. I guarantee you we are being as responsible as we possibly can, and nobody is trying to keep anything from anybody. And you have your question, but
Right. I have
again,
my question, and
we
your
have
last
this
bond,
information. No, we have this information. It's
Right.
I
That was
really
2
don't
years
know that
ago,
bringing
Pat.
in another architecture firm is going to make a difference in terms of
You never
the
know.
parameters of our septic.
Well, we don't know.
Well, we do know because the construction managers are Mr. Merlini and Mr. Swerdloff and Mr. Catalan. And of course in KSQ, but I mean they are going to handle that.
I mean, I don't want to bring this up, but a couple of meetings ago, when I mentioned that the septic field was going to cost $1 million, there was dissension on the board that said, no, it wasn't. So, I mean, things change, numbers changed. We have to go back to the tape and look.
Actually, John, you were the one a few weeks ago who talked about it and said a septic would be less.
What?
There was no dissension on.
Yes, we had
Correct,
people who
that's
said
not
it wasn't going to be.
John, I got to
won't
tell you,
get
I
into
take
it.
exception just for the simple fact that we've listened to everything that the community has talked about. We have been more open in this process over the last 2 years. You come here every meeting looking to find something under the mat. There is no grassy knoll. There is no second shooter. All right, we're here trying to give you the best that we can, and we're not sugarcoating anything. We're not doing it. I think we've done a great job. Okay, we've spent more time making sure that we do the right things. But you keep coming here looking for something that's wrong. There's nothing wrong.
We've been
Nothing.
completely honest. Thank
Okay?
you, Carson. Thank you.
Well, you've had one bond fail, and you may have this one fail, and this part could be part of the
So
system.
you know what? That's fine,
I
John.
mean,
That's your opinion.
Yeah, it has to be an open
All right,
and free
Carson,
exchange.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, next week, 2 weeks from now, the committee will bring forward 2 resolutions for the board. We'll work. Oh, did you want to say anything? No. No, you're good? Okay. You do, but you don't. Okay. Up.
No, I just want to know if we're going to upgrade this system because you guys keep fading in and fading out. Do you ever watch these board meetings on television? You should watch them because it's I had a hard time hearing Mr. Malini because I'm speaking, but I don't know if I'm projecting, but I can hear myself. I couldn't hear you, Carson. I couldn't hear the end woman. I basically got you faded in, and then all of a sudden the volume went up. You tell me that it has nothing to do with you moving, but we're watching your little fingers move. So we're trying to figure out how this system works. Well, you always project, but Lori does project well. But Charles, I was able to hear you. Marion was a little bit on the low side. And I speak low, and I don't really project that loudly, but I can hear myself. But you guys don't come across. Even the superintendent is coming across softer. And I'm saying to myself, boy, I'm really going to have to go for an audiology test. But you do project, so I'm just saying that you guys have to
Dr.
listen to
Spurlock.
the board meeting on TV.
Just
Because you're not
listen.
gonna get your point across.
I don't want the visual.
Is it us, Anthony, with the mics, or is it that? Huh?
Hear that, Lori? Clearer and louder. All right.
Sure.
They can hear me.
Oh.
I think I know what the problem is. When you're off microphone, he turns your volume down. And on TV, you miss the first half a sentence that every one of you say as he's turning it up. You got to leave him up. At the town, they leave him up all the time. I've been on a zoning board for 20 years. And we turn a microphone off if we want to make a side comment. But they're live, and then you pick up everything. We're missing a lot of the meetings because of that fiddling back and forth. The first, as I said, half sentence of everything you say is missed.
Okay.
Okay?
I'll make sure I save all the interesting stuff for the end. So.
That's why we say the controversial things at the beginning of a
There you
sentence.
go. Any bad words come at the beginning.
Right. So for 2 weeks, we are going to present to the board 2 resolutions that Enrique will work on with our bond counsel. It will be the formal legal resolution, both resolutions that will ask the public to vote on December 10th. One will be for $6.2 million, and the other will be the authorized $659,000. That board support of those 2 resolutions on October 23rd will start our timeline and we'll be off and running. So we will put that on the agenda. We'll work with our bond counsel and we will pound the pavement and communicate to the public about this project. So that's
All of our emails are indeed. Our emails are they're all available on the website. Please feel free. I mean, if you see us, speak to us. Or not, but no. We beg for input. So anything that anybody has to contribute, please do so.
all right. So we will do that in 2 weeks. Moving along, we're going to invite Dr. Swerdloff back to fill the board in on a technology survey that was completed back in May of 2013 about readiness in the community regarding internet usage.
Double header. The other PowerPoint? Thanks. So I mentioned this back in May or June very briefly, the outcomes of this survey, and I have a little bit more detail that I wanted to share with you. So one of the questions that comes up always as we do more online applications and or more web-based applications in school is, well, what about at home? Can as a third grade teacher or a fifth grade teacher, can I assign this to my students to do at home? And that's something that we never really had a good handle on. Can you do that? You know, how many of your students have internet access at home, and how many don't? So we did a survey last spring. We did it in school during the day. It was a student completed survey. K through 5, they did it in homerooms. The high school, they did it in English classrooms. In the middle school, I think they did it with Mrs. Ruiz. But the idea was to really get a better sense of what kinds of access kids have at home, how much, and see if there's any discrepancies and anything glaring. And so this is just it's really just like 5 slides to just give you the data and give you a sense of what we learned. So this is the responses, the counts of the survey by school. The first column is the size of the sample, number of students that returned the survey. Second column is the full population, and the third column is the percent responding. And you can see there's some variation, but for any kind of survey of this, anything above 50% is pretty good. So 69, 93, those are all really pretty high sample sizes. So those are all very good numbers of surveys collected. And it had a lot to do with the day it was given in the schedule and where kids were and whether they got to take it or not. So the first thing that we asked was, did you use computers this week at school? And this was actually a little surprising to me, but you can see that there's some variation in between the 3 elementary schools and also the high school being such a low number. And I don't quite know what the reason for that is. It could be that one of the things is in the high school they're not really using computers so much in the classroom, because they don't have clusters of computers. It's more of a lab thing, and some classes go and some classes perhaps don't. So I'm not quite sure what the explanation for that is. This one is really kind of in some ways the most important one, and this is internet use at home by school. And this is where you see a significant discrepancy there between the BV school and the other schools. All the other schools are pretty close, 96 or 98%. And the way the question was worded was, did you use the internet this week or within the last week at home? Because we wanted to, thank you to David White, by the way, for helping with this. We wanted to make sure that it wasn't just a computer connected to the internet sitting on mom or dad's desk in their office that the kid never got to touch. So the question really said, did you use the internet within the last week at home? And so that's good news. That's, in 4 of our schools, pretty much almost every kid is getting online at home and has access to those resources. So, I can say to those teachers, yeah, we just purchased Math Buddies, or we just purchased Learning A to Z, and it's for use in school, but you can also assign it for use at home. So, and obviously at BV there is an issue there that we need to deal with, and Josh Cohn and Beth Gruber and I have been talking about some creative ways to get some of those families some of our the computers that we turn over every year. The issue really there is getting internet access and trying to find ways for an outside organization to subsidize that. We haven't had much less luck with that yet, but we're still working on it. So this is by grade level. The same question, did you use the internet at home within the last week by grade level? And as you would expect, kindergarten, it's actually higher than I would expect, because my kindergartner wouldn't be on the computer. But you could see that it went up and then it kind of leveled out across the grades. And it really points to how much the generation of students, how much of their life is online and on their devices. I don't know, but nowhere near this. I mean, that data is available. There are studies, there are longitudinal studies that get repeated every 5-10 years, and it's dramatically different. So this one is number of devices at home, and devices is a desktop, a laptop, or a tablet. And where you have more than 100%, it means that there's more devices than people or students. So what we did is one of the questions was, do you have siblings? So that we factored for siblings, so to try and make the data more accurate. So at Frank G. Lindsay, that means every kid has access to more than one device. And you can see that's so. I can tell you 5 or 10 years ago, you might have seen a lot of one-computer homes, and that's not so much the case anymore.
I'm sorry, I'm a little confused. It's saying student-reported internet availability at home by school is 88 in BV?
Yes.
And then, but it's 98 computer devices? So what are they saying?
It means there's devices, so that means for this one, it means either the student doesn't get to use it, or it's not on the internet.
Okay.
It's probably the first.
Okay, that's what I was
Right.
wondering what the distinction was.
So in that case, there's computers at home or something that, maybe mom or dad has a laptop or a tablet, but the student doesn't get to use it.
So we know it's there.
Still pretty high. It's still there. Yeah. But again, that's the important number, which means 12% of the kids don't have access to the internet at home.
No, didn't use it. I could tell you to brush your teeth and you still don't brush your teeth. So that's, you know what I'm saying?
Right, and the assumption we made in the study was that if you didn't use it in the last week, you're probably not using it.
But maybe it's just the children aren't allowed, but I mean, it's available, but they're not allowed.
Right, but this is the question is, are the students using it regularly? That's really the heart of the question. Not is it available, not do the parents have it, but do our students use it on a regular basis? And that is an assumption that we made, saying, okay, if I'm using it on a regular basis, it's pretty likely that I used it within the last week, at least once.
So maybe we should rephrase that. Are you allowed to use the
Well,
internet?
We tried to make it as simple as possible.
Oh, they get it with
We did this one, okay. And then this is also interesting. So this is smartphone availability at home by school. And this is not necessarily the student's own smartphone, but that there's one at home available for students to use. And this is where things like the app comes into play. Like we know that when we have this app up and running, there's going to be a lot of people that will be able to take advantage of it because those smartphones are pretty prevalent now. So just some of the implications in thinking all about this, communication with students. So all of our students in the upper grades now have Google Apps accounts and Gmail accounts, and most of them have access at home, so we have the ability to communicate with students now through their HenHUD email account. Communication with parents. One of the things that we've been trying to do for several years now is move to more of electronic communication, getting away from sending home papers, both as an efficiency method and a cost savings method. And I think this tells us that, with some exceptions, we can continue with that process slowly and methodically, and while being aware that there are people who don't have access at home. The issue of homework that I mentioned earlier, the question always comes up: can I assign my students to do typing practice at home? What about the kids that don't have access? Well, in most schools, it's 2 out of 100, so it's pretty safe to say you can assign it. And then public relations. It's we have made a push over the past few years. Our public relations strategy has shifted and changed a little bit, but certainly using the electronic media is something that we can take advantage of with the large number of smartphones and devices at home, and obviously there's an opportunity for cost savings. Thank you.
So what was the date this was done?
May.
I think it was around May 10th or something
So
like
about
that.
5 months ago,
2013,
okay.
yeah.
It's very useful information. Our third and final presentation tonight is Dr. Gottlieb giving an overview of APPR for the board. We live it every day, and we have very innovative descriptors to talk about APPR. But what else we'll do is walk us through what it is, the law, how we evaluate teachers under APPR, how we have component scores, composite scores, so on and so forth. So with that, I will turn the floor over to Dr. Gottlieb.
All right. Thank you for this opportunity to speak about this compelling topic.
Controversial.
It's on board docs. So I started this presentation, the first slide you'll see second, actually,
Second
not
one.
the title slide.
There you go.
Okay, so what is the APPR? It stands for Annual Professional Performance Review. And what I gave you here was just a quotation of the law. We've always been evaluating teachers and principals. We've all been evaluated, but now it's much more systematized, much more of a number and less of a descriptor. So you'll see that there are 3 parts adding up to 100 points. The first 20 points are based on either state assessments or comparable growth measures, and that would be in subject areas that don't have a state assessment. Even the arts have assessments these days.
How do you determine growth? Or you want to?
Okay. At the most basic level, growth is from a beginning point to an end point. So if the students take a pre-assessment or a pre-test in the fall and they take a similar test in the spring, you can measure the growth. There's a much more scientific approach to it, looking at either a value-added model or kind of an enhanced growth model where the state looks at children in similar groups. So how many students with disabilities in your classroom? How many English language learners in your classroom? And they look to see where those children start and where they end up across the whole population in the state and compare your kids with that. So it's not just a straight from the pre-test to the post-test. It's looking at the descriptors of the kids. So that's for the first 20 points. The second 20 points is really up to the districts and up to pretty much the teachers, how they want to either measure growth or achievement. We oversee it, but the teachers have a great deal more latitude. So, for example, in our music classes, they assessed each other's final performances against a rubric. We're trying to make this be reasonable and meaningful and useful for teachers. It's not just a paper and pencil test. So we have more latitude with the second 20 points. The third part, the other measures of teacher-principal effectiveness, these are measured on rubrics, and I'll be more specific in another slide, adding to a possible 100 points. If you haven't heard the word HEDI ratings or HEIDI ratings, depending on how your people use this acronym, it stands for highly effective, developing, and ineffective. And teachers and principals are assigned a composite score, anywhere from 0 to 100. If you receive a score of 91 to 100 points, you're deemed highly effective. 75 to 90 is effective, and so forth. I wish I could say that this was based on anything that's statistically dependable. It's not. So let's not put too much store behind these points at this point. This is the first year we're doing it. In the Hendrick Hudson schools, the first part, the growth measure, the first 20 points, that's completely determined by New York State. It's either on New York State assessment or on a student learning objective, which is, again, a growth model, ending in a Regents if you're in the high school, or ending in an assessment from an approved list if you're not in a New York State testing grade. Children in grades 3 through 8 take the math assessment and the literacy assessment from New York State, and that's where those points come from. If you look at the growth measure for the principals, that's based on all the children in a group in their school. So all the 4th through 8th graders in the elementary and middle school result in a score from 0 to 20 points for the principals. And in the high school, it's a combination of various Regents tests and how the kids do on it. And that's where Mr. Mackin got his points, 0 to 20. Going back to the teachers for the local 20 points, again, what we chose to do was more of a holistic approach, not just a multiple choice test or something of that nature, but across the board, either performance or benchmarking tasks. So benchmarking, looking at children's writing and how they're meeting against a rubric. So this is something we've been doing for quite a while. We've been benchmarking writing, and it's something the teachers were comfortable with, and it's not another test, and it's something we should do anyway. It's good teaching to benchmark writing or to look at performances. And then finally, the state provides a list of rubrics. A rubric is a multi-page list of descriptors of either effective teaching or effective leadership. And our district went, and this was negotiated with the unions, most districts went with Danielson, Charlotte Danielson's Enhancing Professional Practice Frameworks for Teaching. It's been around for a long time. It's proven. It's a very good tool. It describes all the different aspects that you would hope to see in an effective classroom. There are 4 major domains. Planning is one, curriculum, instruction, and then your professional performance in the school is the 4th domain. And for the principals, they negotiated with the superintendent. This was a couple of years ago, and they determined to use the multidimensional principal performance rubric. And that measures aspects of leadership and how that affects student learning in the schools. So again, a well-established and well-respected tool. This is what happens if a teacher is deemed developing or ineffective. Teachers or principals, if they receive a heady rating of developing or ineffective, they're on a improvement plan. So it's either a teacher improvement plan, a TIP, or a principal improvement plan, a PIP. And what if a teacher or a principal has been deemed ineffective for 2 years in a row, you as the board, the district, has the option of starting discipline proceedings. Doesn't mean you have to start discipline proceedings, because these numbers don't mean a whole lot at this point. They're all over the place. Hopefully with time, they'll become more dependable. I must say that I'm appreciative of the rubric part of it, because it really describes good teaching, and it gives us something to aim for. But the testing piece of it, it's going to be a while till we're secure that it's measuring what it says it's measuring. So when I say that 2 ratings of ineffective 2 years in a row, a district may decide to start discipline proceedings, but surely does not have to. It depends on a whole host of issues and situations. And of course, there's an appeal process. Professionals are guaranteed due process. And that's really what it is. It's systematizing something we've been doing for a very long time, which is evaluating teachers and administrators.
If a teacher is put on a TIP or a principal is put on a PIP, what exactly are we as a district doing to assist them? Because I think that's more important than actually, that
Pollyanna
portion.
here would like to think that this is not a death sentence. If you need help, and we as a district, your administrator and the teacher and perhaps a mentor on the grade level, another union member, determines in what areas perhaps your planning needs to be more thorough, perhaps you need to learn more about what really solid writing looks like at a grade level, perhaps you need to learn more of the mathematics. It shouldn't be end-of-the-world insult that you're on an improvement plan. This is us supporting teachers and their professionalism. So this is something that I'm saying over and over and over again. I don't want this to be, and I hate that this can be, the end of the world. It's to help. We don't want to see anyone fail. We're all teachers. We want people to do well. So that's the spirit of the TIP for me. We have the ability to provide a mentor. When we budgeted for our mentors for new teachers, we left a little cushion there to budget for mentors if we find that teachers will benefit from this. It's wonderful to have your evaluator working with you, but it's very effective to have a respected colleague helping you. So it's got to be about help. It can't be about crime and punishment.
What kind of disciplinary
The disciplinary proceeding, that's, legal talk for the 3028 procedure.
Okay.
If it goes to that.
Termination.
But termination. Well, going, the due process.
So
and
that's-
going and recommending.
That's
But that is so last resort and unusual. And again, we can't really trust these numbers yet. It's so brand new.
Realize everybody knows this, I think, but the Common Core has made this very difficult, even more difficult, obviously, because.
Well, we're doing everything at once.
Right.
You know, in the normal world, you don't do every single thing at once, but we are.
In 2 months.
Yesterday.
Actually, 2 months.
Right. But we're work hard, we're good-spirited. Teachers are, we had a wonderful meeting today with elementary folks who are working on Common Core Math and ELA, and it's good, positive stuff.
Who will this data be available to? Will it be available to the public, just to administrators, to the board? I mean, no, I'm just.
Well, thank you for that question, Charles.
The teacher, the composite score?
Yes.
Yeah. This is,
What was your question, Charles? What did you say?
Who will this be available to?
Well, it's certainly available to us as administrators.
Right.
That's,
Okay, and there is law, there's wording in the law about parents accessing the score of their current teacher, and how that will happen is what we're considering right now.
yeah, each district needs to have a process, a system of communicating those scores to a child's parent. And there are some really, really huge issues that districts need to work around regarding this number and it being a personnel issue, which it is, and being a confidential issue, which it is. And there are districts struggling with what does that communication look like, and how do you know that you're communicating to the child's parent? And that sounds like an easy one. Send an email, put it on the parent portal, put a letter in the mail. That letter in the mail gets opened by the wrong person, is put in the wrong mailbox, and all of a sudden this highly legally sensitive personnel data are shared with the wrong people. We are on the hook. So there are districts that are creating processes that necessitate, if a parent wants a child's score, they need to come to a location, district office, school, show ID and proof that they are the child's teacher. It starts a process of gathering the data, and then they come back for a physical receiving of the information again. And the legal question that our attorneys are working through is what should that representation be? Should it be a document on letterhead that says so-and-so is 12, or should it be a verbal conversation? Because there are huge legal implications of if we give Mary Pat a document to say her son's teacher is a 2, are we on the hook for where that document goes and to track it and all those sort of things? So it is
It's a huge
deal, and we have until November under Race to the Top to have that figured out, and not many districts do, and it's
And you know, take into that, parents are they'll only have access to the composite score. You're not going to see the different pieces. And I'll say this over and over again, we just can't trust these numbers. So way too much can be read into something that is totally unfair, totally confidential, and within the realm of personnel, which has never been exposed. So this is a very, very big deal, and one we have to take very seriously.
in terms of what we do next, we are anticipating we'll receive some legal guidance, and that's for all intent and purposes an executive session discussion because of the nature and the sensitivity of it.
policies, or is this regulation? Or?
It's a regulation because we're implementing the APPR portion of Race to the Top.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the presentations for tonight, but we do have to go back because we forgot to do committee reports. And the main one that we did in particular, the facilities committee did meet in the past week, obviously, and that has been presented through the bond. I believe the only other one, and the finance committee met, and again, it was regarding the bond. But the audit committee also met, actually, if you'd like to,
Yeah.
our external auditor came and did a gave us the findings, and, thank you, Charles, if you'll just address that.
Read it all. Okay. The audit committee, which is Enrique, Mary Pat, Beth Gruber, and Joe Ferretta from the community, and Mr. Hochreiter. We met with O'Connor Davies, our independent external auditor, and we received and discussed 3 reports for the year ended June 30th, 2013, which were our financial statements and supplementary information, our communication of internal control matters identified in the audit, and our extra classroom activity funds. And the purpose of the audit was to form and express an opinion about whether our financial statements are presented fairly and in conformity with accounting principles generally accepted in the U.S., which is GAAP. So they spent time in our business office last summer, and they made inquiries, evaluated information, compared and reconciled information, and performed compliance tests. It's an annual thing. It's a mandate after Roslyn that everybody has audits. Their findings, they expressed an opinion that the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of the school district as of June 30th, 2013, and the respective changes in financial position thereof, in accordance with GAAP. They made the statement that our financial statement disclosures are consistent and clear with the most sensitive relating to our pension plan information, other post-employment benefit obligations payable, our outstanding bonded indebtedness, and our fund balances. They made 4 recommendations. The administration is one for the repair reserve, special aid fund, school lunch fund, and the journal entry authorization. The administration is already addressing each of those and is well on the way to that. They did express a qualified opinion about our extracurricular activity fund based on inadequacies and controls over receipt of student club revenues. In other words, we can't control when the kid gets the money until it gets to the school district personnel.
The only concern that they had was because of when there's a bake sale, that there's, the checks and balances of if, the $100 in is the $100 that was, and the cost if they took money out to buy a cake mix or something. With that sort of the cash with these, the students doing this, it's very difficult to put in those controls. And that is absolutely a universal issue. They said that it's, that was their concern, and that's
actually,
everywhere.
We're the administration's already addressing this, and they're working with their internal auditors who are meeting with our staff this week about internal controls for our stipends and internal controls for the extracurricular activity. In other discussion, they noticed or they mentioned that we had a significant positive variation between our budgeted and actual expenses due to increased management control and energy costs and day-to-day operations, and they found that to be a very positive thing. And they did mention that we have one of the leanest, if not the leanest, business office staffs they work with. And it's been cut to the bone over the years, is exactly what they said to us, that they've worked with us. And, all in all, it was a positive meeting, and they were happy. I did attend 2 other committees while we were out. I was on the Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES Component Districts Facilities Advisory Committee. But I went, we approved last year about a $20 million bond for the BOCES, and they're doing a 3-year project of roofs, HVAC, and other work. And it was good to talk to them because they bid out the first year separately from the other years to kind of see how it was going to go. And they had extreme difficulties with the roofing contractor over the summer. In fact, they are withholding almost the entire amount of the bid award because the contractor could not complete it to specifications. They had to hire another contractor to come in and finish it up, and also have the manufacturer, which is Firestone, step in to help them with it.
In the other committee?
and the other committee, wait, one more
Sorry,
thing.
I've got ahead of you.
They're having a significant issue, which we may have to step in with. There's 2 therapy pools, and it's a relatively new and innovative idea. There's about 150 students who are disabled. About 60% of them are in wheelchairs, and they're having a difficult time with the Westchester County Department of Health signing off on the plans. And so, they're resigned to not being able to use it for this year, but if it goes on much longer, they may not be able to get it in place. And it's, for these kids who are disabled, they don't have a place to do, and then part of it is just the Department of Health not being comfortable with it as it is and needing some impetus, and so they may ask the boards, the component boards, to write a letter in support or to go to our SEPTAs and ask them to call in. And they're preparing bid packages for this winter for the next phase, which will start next summer. The other one was the technology committee that Barbara and I sat in on, and I discussed most of it while Matthew was up. One thing, they had 583 help desk requests in September. They closed 572 of them, which is pretty amazing. And they're soliciting advice to improve the tech update. And they discussed a few other things, but the one, when I talked about the parent portal as being a mandate, we actually have to implement one through one of 3 required vendors, but it's not as good as the one that we have. So we're. But it's free. But it's free, yes, for the next 2 years. But we're having to implement it, so we're advising people to downplay it and just go on and use the one that we have because it's better. The one that the state has is static data. It's batch updated once a week. Ours is live and it's updated every day. So, but it's required. The thing that we discussed was that, across the state, not everybody is as up to date on the parent portal as we are. And so, requiring something was an effective way to get it rolled out across the state. But for those districts like us that are ahead of the game, it's redundant. And that's it.
Okay. That brings us to the end of our meeting. There is one other opportunity for any audience comments. Of course.
John Benedictus. Getting back to this teacher evaluation system, you said that there is going to be a way that parents and public could actually find out this evaluation, correct? Or did I misunderstand you?
By law, we have to have a way that you can access the composite score of the one teacher your teacher has this year.
Okay, well,
Your child.
I sincerely hope that we're not going to have a lot of teachers that say don't
The
get
teachers
a
don't have a
satisfactory.
choice.
I'm sorry?
They don't have a choice.
They don't have I'm saying I hope we don't have a faculty that doesn't receive a high rating. But what happens, first of all, when is this going to be available? And what happens to a parent who sees a teacher that did not get the best rating in the world? And your child's going into that classroom the next year. I think you're going to have maybe a lot of people saying, wait a minute, if this teacher did not receive that rating, and I'm not saying this is good or bad, I just want to know, because I know I'm going to look.
That's the fear.
I tried very
That's
hard
the
to
fear.
explain that we can't trust these numbers.
I'm sorry?
I tried very hard to explain that these numbers are not 100% accurate.
No, I understand that, but I'm just saying you're probably headed towards some sort of confrontation, because what parent's going to say, gee, this person didn't get the best rating in the world, but I want my kid in that class. I don't know. But when would is this going to be at the end of the year you can get this evaluation, or will it be sometime during the next year? In other words, when would this information be available?
As the law is written right now, we need to create a system so parents can access the composite score in the month of November. I don't have the date specific.
So your
but
kids are
remember,
already in the class.
the only thing parents legally have access to is a number, not the physical evaluation, not the different components that lead to that number. So if you came in and met with me and said, Mr. Hochreiter, my son or daughter has Mr. Smith, what's the score? I'd look it up and I'd say 21.
Right.
Okay, how'd you get to 21? Sorry, sir, we can't disclose that. But here's a one-pager
on what the scores mean or don't mean, and I mean it's very not parent friendly, not district friendly, not teacher friendly, and this was not well thought out by the state. Okay. And what will happen is you and other parents will go and
bring out your
talk,
pitchforks,
right? Yeah.
And you know, oh, what's your teacher? Blah blah blah, and create a Facebook page, a Twitter page, call the newspaper and say that you know, school XYZ has 30% of their people are effective, highly effective, what have you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It seems like, you know, it's opening a can of worms. And as a parent, I'm just asking, you know, and I realize, you know, you're not into this yet, but one thing, it's going to happen. You know it will. And then the question is, what do I do as a parent? You know, saying either I'm satisfied or I'm dissatisfied, you know.
About doing what you've done for years. Ask the other parents what their experience, because the number, it is what it is, but it may not be completely. Talk to the other parents, because they're, you know, the number may not be exactly, you know, this is an imperfect system at this point.
Right. No,
it may not be accurate. I mean, there may be somebody who just, you know, something happened, whatever.
Right, they had a bad day,
who's normally an exceptional teacher.
I mean, everybody has a bad hair day.
You know, it's just, but I'm saying, I would just do what you normally do.
You're reducing a professional to a number, and that has no basis in reality. So don't, if we put too much store in it, we're making huge mistakes.
Is your child learning? Is your child going to school each day? Is your child engaged? You know, those are the things you look at.
That's the true measurement.
Get up and go to school. Actually, the book that Lori recommended to us, Reign of Error by Diane Ravitch, discusses this pretty thoroughly.
Excellent.
I'm reading it right now.
He talks about the problems inherent with reducing people down to a number and where that came from, who's driving that push, and different kinds of things. So it's worth reading.
Well, it'd be interesting to see what happens next year.
There's a lot of good teachers, that's what's gonna happen.
We need to vote to accept.
Oh, yes.
What do we need to accept?
I'm going to give you agita yet. We do need to vote to accept the audit results, please. So if I can get a motion to approve to accept the audit results. Those, aye. Thank you, Roseanne. I
Thanks, everybody.
Anyway, does anybody else have anything? Or are we? All right.
Got so much, but it's not
so
coming out
much.
tonight.
Not tonight. Just to keep in mind, we do have our next meeting is 2 weeks from tonight. It's Wednesday, the 23rd. In the interim, it will be here. In the interim, we will be having a meet and greet at Dunkin' Donuts. Not this Saturday, but next Saturday, 8:30. Pardon?
October 19th?
October 19th, next Saturday. And in the interim, if those, you know, if you have any questions, please reach out. If you have any thoughts, any suggestions, any ideas, any discussion on the bond, please reach out and let us know. Otherwise, have a good evening and enjoy Monday off, those of you who have it. Can I get a motion to close? All those in favor?